In this video, I want to show you some of the things that I learned way too late into my save. Baldur's Gate 3 quick tips, let's go. A lot of players that I've seen store the camp supplies inside of their inventory. And I suppose that's very tempting because you already have a backpack that seems to be designated for it. However, your camp supplies can just as well be stored inside the traveler's chest, which you can find in your camp. When you go to rest, the game will know that you have camp supplies inside of the chest and will use them automatically. This can save you a lot of carry weight.
It's free real estate.
You can quickly send items to your traveler's chest by right-clicking them. This basically means that you have infinite carry weight. And because you can always go back to your camp, even if you don't plan on resting, you can retrieve items as needed. You can actually store corpses inside of this chest as well. And before you ask me how that's useful at all, necromancers. Have a strong character pick up the corpses, drop them in the chest, and then in the morning when you're done resting, have your resident necromancer revive their new friend. In this way, they're always going to start combat with either a zombie or a skeleton. On vendors, I found the trade screen to be way more useful than the barter screen in most situations. You can switch between the modes up here. Inside of the trade screen, you can just double click items to sell them immediately. To make things even faster, the game allows you to add items as wares. Wares can then be sold quickly to a vendor by pressing this button down here. Additionally, if you're playing with mouse and keyboard, you can hold down Ctrl to select multiple items at once. Buying and selling items should always be done from the character with the highest charisma inside of your party. That's because you get a linearly scaling bonus or discount for every point that the character has in charisma. This bonus also carries over to other characters that you want to sell from as long as you initiate the trade with the character that has high charisma. Additionally, vendors have attitude bonuses that are specific to every single character inside of your party. That means ideally you want to initiate the trade on a character that has both high charisma and a high attitude bonus. I sure hope you haven't been throwing away gold by trading on your 8 charisma barbarian. Clicking on a gear slot will bring up an interface that will show all possible options for the slot across all of your characters. I very nearly fell off my chair when I found out about this 80 hours in. You can heal characters by throwing health potions at them, and you can even use this to get them out of the down state. So the next time you have a down party member, consider if it's worth getting them back on their feet this way. You can stack crates to reach high up locations, especially in combination with jump. Again, you should also consider that you can store crates inside of your traveler's chest in the party camp. That means by quickly going back to your camp, you can retrieve crates and use them wherever you want. Being able to reach high up places in this game can be really useful because there's often hidden paths, and you can also use this whenever you try to ambush an enemy and want to get an advantage. The spell Disguise Self can be useful to turn your character into a gnome or a halfling to fit into small spaces that you wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. For example, in the Druid's Grove there's this hole right here. There are some even smaller burrow holes that not even small characters can fit through. To get into these, you have to be a small character or disguised as a small character, and additionally use the spell Reduce on yourself. You can also fit through as a druid in cat form, or alternatively using the spell Gaseous form. There are some characters you'll find out in the open world that have no dialogue option to trade. But if this symbol down here lights up, you can trade with them anyways. Most of them don't have anything great, but some of them do, so in my opinion it's generally worth to at least take a look. Once you deal enough damage in a single hit, you can start destroying doors and chests by simply smashing them. This will save you a lot of thieves' tools, and it's admittedly also just way more fun. Oh, and don't worry about the loot inside of the chests. No loot is destroyed whenever you smash a chest. In the settings, you can select to play with or without a karmic dice. This will skew dice rolls to tip their balance in your favor if you've been very unlucky, or against you if you've been very lucky. However, this also affects your enemies, and some people have said that over the course of a run, if you have the karmic dice enabled, the enemies will deal more damage to you. However, I have no way of confirming this. So if you want to have true random dice rolls, consider playing with this setting disabled. You should take long rests very frequently because you need to do so to advance certain companion stories. By avoiding long rests for too long of a time, you can potentially lock yourself out of story progression for some of them. So try not be too stingy with your camp supplies. You can find a lot of them around the world, and a lot of vendors will also sell them to you. When deciding how to invest your ability points, unless you have a specific plan, you should stick to even numbers. That's because a lot of abilities, rather than using the flat ability score from 1 to 30, are going to use something called the ability modifier. To determine the ability modifier, you take your ability score, subtract 10, divide it by 2, and then round the result down. Which means that, for example, it doesn't matter whether you have 18 or 19 strength from a pure damage standpoint when it comes to abilities. There are some reasons to take odd ability scores. For example, if you want to increase them in the future, or if you want to make use of some of the passive bonuses that they provide, such as strength improving your carry capacity, or charisma increasing the amount of money that you can get from vendors. Just don't improve your ability score to an odd number if all you're looking for is an increase in damage. You can always swap out your spells as a caster, despite them being called prepared spells. If you can get a glimpse of whatever you'll be fighting, consider swapping to spells better suited to your enemies. To find out more about enemies quickly, you can highlight them and press T, which will bring up the examine menu. On this screen, you can figure out whether they have any resistances that are going to be detrimental to the spells that you have. The point being, don't bring any fireballs to a gunfight. Something I've seen many players underuse is the class action Shove. You can use this to push characters into their deaths off of cliffs, for example. This checks your character's strength versus the enemy's weight, and it's often a great way to get rid of opponents during combat. It can also be a useful tool for disengaging from opponents, because unlike disengage, it's a bonus action. So if you don't want to waste your action, but still want to try and get away from the enemy, give them a good shove. Another underrated ability is jump, because it's probably one of the best ways to navigate the battlefield and take shortcuts. It can help you completely avoid effects like fire or poison on the ground, and you can use it to jump past opponents without triggering any attacks of opportunity. Additionally, nothing says F you more than a barbarian dive bombing an enemy from 30 meters up in the air. Remember to use the environment to your advantage. This took me way too long to get used to. But there are many useful things that you can break or manipulate to make your opponent's lives harder, such as oil barrels, ladders, and chandeliers. These are often not immediately obvious, so when combat starts, take a moment to hover over different objects in the area that look suspicious, and then figure out if there's a way you can use them to annoy your opponents. Otherwise, you can also bring a strong character to carry environmental items with you, such as Karlach throwing explosive barrels. Fun! Characters don't actually need to have consumables that you want them to use in combat inside of the inventory. You can simply hit tab and use them from anyone's inventory. Speaking of consumables, one of my favorite settings is to turn off adding things automatically to your hotbar, except for spells. This allows you to keep your inventory clean and lets you sort things the way you like without the game messing it up whenever you pick up a new consumable, for example. You can throw a torch or some other source of fire onto the ground and dip your weapon in it to deal bonus fire damage. Dip is a bonus action, but dropping and picking up items doesn't cost you anything. So maybe consider this the next time you have a bonus action left and nothing to do with it. If you use both a melee and a ranged weapon, don't forget to switch back to your melee weapon after using a ranged attack. That way you won't miss out on any potential attacks of opportunity as opponents run past you. If you want to buff up before a fight, you should enter turn-based mode to give yourself more time and not have the effects run out before you enter combat. Additionally, turn-based mode is simply the best whenever you're trying to sneak around without getting spotted. Humans and half-elves have shield proficiency, meaning your sorcerers and wizards get a +2 armor class bonus for free. You should always keep a way to create light handy to avoid a penalty on your attack in dark areas. Without spoiling too much, especially in Act 2, it can get really nasty. Some races have dark vision up to a certain range, but some of them don't. One of my favorite ways around this is the spell called Daylight, which you can use to either create a sphere of light or attach it to an item that's then going to glow for you. You should set up your reactions inside of the spellbook to avoid having to select one every time they come up. Some of them you'll want to use most of the time whenever they come up, such as Shield Bash or Attack of Opportunity. To set this up, simply uncheck Ask for all the reactions that you want your party to use automatically. And finally, the last tip. If you double click on your map, you can create a map marker. You can give it a name and by doing so mark interesting spots on the map. My favorite use for these is actually marking vendors on the map, because they're not marked by default unless you get very close to them. So this is a great way to remember their location. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you have a great day and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.